It's Valentine's Day, and technology surely has oozed into every aspect of our lives, especially our love lives, and it's complicated. Joining us to talk about how tech has changed how we find love forever is Sherr, executive editor at CNET. Welcome to the show, Ian.
Hi, how you doing?
We're doing well. So CNET has dozens of pieces about...
You guys love the love. You love the love at CNET.
We really went out for this. Yeah, definitely.
You really went for it on the cyber love. But let's start with dating sites, those dating sites pieces. There are sites that help people find whoever they're looking for, whatever weird thing you're into. Tell us what you found when you looked into those niche dating sites like trekpassions.com.
Yeah, I've been looking around at this stuff for quite a while, and I've really been fascinated by how the internet allows people who have different interests to really kind of come together and create communities. And one of the ways that that's really clear is in the dating website. So as you mentioned, there's one for Star Trek fans. So that you can find your crew members, as it were. There are ones for vampire type people who really love the night. There are one of the more interesting ones I ran across was for truckers, where people can actually find people to go on long hauls with them or even date. And then another one that popped up recently that I was aware of is Trump singles, where fans of the president can come together and go on dates as well. And by the way, there's a Bernie singles as well, in case you're wondering. And so it underscores how people are using the internet really to find these communities that otherwise they would have a really hard time finding, right? If you imagine you're in your hometown and you're trying to find people to hang out with, to date, to whatever, it's very hard to find like-minded people. You usually have to go through a lot of process of talking to them, figuring it all out. The internet washes all that away. It brings you together automatically almost. And that's why these sites seem to really be popular.
I have to imagine when you're talking about these niche dating sites, so you've got the dating sites that have millions of users because they're widespread and they're just the catch-all dating sites. And then you have these niche sites that are very specific to a certain characteristic or a certain, I don't know, just a certain passion, let's say. How are they able, in these cases, do you think, to generate enough users for that niche in a particular geographic area? I have to imagine that would be a big hurdle for them.
I think that with 7 billion people on the planet, there are more people interested in stuff around you the same as you than you think. And I think that's what these websites have really shown us, right? And, one way to look at that really is to look at stuff like the furry type of world and also the My Little Pony, right? Both of those are ones that that kind of mainstream culture rejects, but have found actually a really big following online. And I think that that's a great example of where really it's about bringing people out of their shells and showing to one another what they're interested in instead of what's normal, right? I'm walking down the street, I say hello to someone randomly, I meet them in a bar. I'm not going to tell them some of the stuff that might be not culturally sensitive or something that's popular. I'm going to take a while. And this stuff kind of makes that stuff very quick.
So a lot of people, including Aziz Ansari, he did a book about this, that there's this idea now that we're all constantly, we feel like there are so many options open to us. Like we can always keep swiping right forever. And so that makes some people just never settle down, for lack of a better word, or just think that there's always something better out there and are waiting a long time. What do you say to that argument that that's what technology has done to relationships?
Well, that's definitely a criticism that I heard when I was speaking with psychologists and sociologists and even a sex comic. All of them agreed that this is a problem that pops up, and it pops up in different ways. So you mentioned the easiest way, right, where people just keep swiping and swiping and swiping, and because they don't have to deal with a real human being across the table, they're going to be willing to just reject until they find what they perceive to be the perfect. But the other part is that it also causes these more informal relationships, right? And, it's not like I'm stumbling onto one-night stands for the first time here, but these apps have certainly made it much easier to kind of get to that stuff quicker. And so, it's something that the psychologists are very worried about when we look at any new technology, because it makes everything much more efficient. I can go through people more efficient. I can weed them out like they're a database and stuff like that. And it's actually something that even came up with Trump singles. The psychologist I spoke to for that one said, look, you may get something out of the opposites attract type issue. And if you're going to say, no, I only want to date people who have the same politics me, you might lose out on something. And that's important. But it's been a problem regardless, right? This has been a problem in religious groups, right? Where people of a certain religion tend to only marry within the religion or whatever. And so it's always been something that's popped up. It's just the internet, again, has kind of exacerbated and made it easier to split to choose based on certain things.
So you also wrote about how this is not just turned it upside down. The technology is really dominating the love life, all of our love lives. Can you talk a little bit about other ways that it's dominating?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the most interesting ones are through communication, right? That as the sex comic told me, Nikki Glaser, who used to have a late night show on Comedy Central, she said it amazes her that you can have an entire relationship with someone over text message and not even ever really meet them. And it's an extreme, but it's actually a good point, is that a lot of this mass communication has made it so that we are, the way we conduct our relationships is very different. And it leads to some problems, right? When you're dealing, especially with communication over the internet, it's hard to get nuance, it's hard to get emotion, and it makes things harder. The other thing also is that these apps, one of the things that she did was that she created a kind of experiment called Tinder Tap Out, where she created really beautiful women on Tinder, but gave them ridiculous personalities. And so she tried to lure men in and see how long they're willing to stick in the conversation for the hope of possibly meeting this woman. And so she told some people, for example, that she had just stolen a wheelchair and sold it for $100, and she was really proud of that. And then she told a Marine, for example, that she had PTSD or party till stupid drunk, right? And the guy kept talking to her. And one of the things that she realized with that is that it seemed like all of these people that they're talking to are another fish in the sea. Right, they're just kind of keep going and going until they get somewhere with it, and that's a different thing. That's something that seems uniquely an effect of technology versus something that's existed in the past.
What can you tell us about this emerging world of virtual reality? This has been, last year was kind of the year where virtual reality moved a little bit further into the mainstream consciousness, and now people, understand that it's this emerging technology that there's actually life to. What are the implications of a world where we don't even have to meet up with someone? We can go into a virtual space and have a date.
Well, it's an interesting idea. So we sent a reporter on a date in space, and we didn't send her in a rocket. She just put on a pair of VR goggles, and it was a little weird to her, right? I mean, it's one of those things where you have to get used to this idea of that there's an avatar on the other side of the room. It's not a real person, but there's a person controlling that avatar. And for her, it kept it kind of separate, right? There wasn't an emotional connection. She was also dating someone at the time, so maybe that didn't help either. But the thing is that it's an interesting issue, and one of the things that we found out in the story was that eHarmony, right, which is now a pretty mainstream website for dating, believes that a lot of our dates are going to happen in virtual reality by 2040. And so, what does that mean, right? How does that change the dynamic? One of the things that she looked at also was that it's not just dating. She actually found out people who were having conducting their relationships in VR. So one couple was actually, one of them travels a lot, the guy. And so he would take a kind of 360 photo, right, of the room he's in or whatever, and he would then sit with his girlfriend in it, right? And the idea was that instead of having to take a photo, text it, and she's like, oh, okay, that's kind of neat, you can actually experience the place together, right? And for long distance relationships especially, it seems pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so maybe after you've started the relationship.
Exactly, right? It becomes a new communication tool.
You also, Allison Vane, one of your reporters, talked about apps that can protect you if you're meeting someone online. Do you have any recommendations for us there?
Yeah, she had several on there, so I recommend reading the story on CNET. But one of them that stood out to me was called Circle of Six, where what you do is that you ask 6 of your friends to kind of agree to be part of your kind of protective circle. And what can happen is that when you fire up the app, you can do things like send them your location or ask for help or whatever. And the idea here, and again, this gets to, let's not just be the old fogies looking, oh, look at those Tinder people. We wanted to make this helpful for people as well. And so these apps specifically help people get out of a bind if they're in one, which, let's be honest, that's a part of dating these days. And it also helps people kind of make sure that they feel safe when they're going on first dates, which my wife told me many months after she met me that she wasn't even sure she was going to go on the first date with me because she was worried that, she met me over the internet. She didn't know whether or not I was a safe person to be around. And that's a story we hear a lot. In fact, we had some of our reporters tell their stories about how they met their significant others. And universally, every one of them said, I wasn't sure who this person was when I was first meeting up with them. And they either brought a friend or they were just anxious about it. And that's something that we tried to address in that story.